All right, I know it's late. I never know when I'm going to go live. It depends when I feel like talking about something. So, I was looking at somebody's video talking about women and asking where have the men gone, the real men, where have they gone? The men who were chivalrous. I'm going to tell you what I remember. I want to talk about the title first. The title says Dictating How People Behave in an Ego Driven World. I want to say society, but I changed my mind and said ego driven world instead. See, people like the ego driven world. Hold on a second. People like an ego driven world, and when you are operating as an ego, you think that you're really in charge, but it's something else that owns you when you are an ego. Most people are egos. I don't care if they're classy. I don't care if they're rich. I don't care if they're poor. I don't care. People in general are egos until they become a pure soul. Basically, when you and most people almost 90 to 100% completely in their flesh, their ego. And so when I hear people's critique on how some feminists have chased the good men away, but at the same time, you have the Andrew Tates and the Cameron Samuels and the Tommies that chase the good women away because they have messed up the minds of other men to the point where you have some women that don't want to deal with men because men were okay. I've said this a long time ago. Not a long time ago. I said it, well, around time like maybe 2015, 2016, something like that. I remember doing home health. I was living in Los Angeles doing home health, and I was speaking to a couple of brown ladies. One lady had a son, right? I was doing therapy with her mother, but I would talk to the young lady. She was closer to my age, right? And after I finished therapy with her mother, or sometimes when I would do exercise, her mother, I would still talk to her. And she had a son, but I think her son was like special needs, right? And so I was telling her around a time when the bashing of specifically brown women was so bad online. It was so bad. Okay. And I remember telling her like that. And she was like saying, well, one person's opinion doesn't, mean that everybody else feel that way. I said, but the thing is this guy has hundreds of thousands of followers. And I was talking about Tommy Sotomayor back then. I said, this guy has hundreds of thousands of followers. So this is not just his opinion. It's a lot of people that's tuning in to watch him. That means he's saying something that people want to hear. That's not just his opinion. And some people just like to hear brown women get bashed. A lot of people tuned in because they just love hearing brown women get bashed. Because I don't care. You can say what brown women are doing wrong all you want to. I don't want somebody coming up to me talking about what Shanae is doing. I know that's a name from Martin, but I'm just coming up with names. I don't want nobody come to me in my life, in my little bubble, telling me what Shanae is doing in the hood. Shanae grew up a certain way. I'm not about to judge Shanae. She grew up a certain way. You don't come to me in my bubble having a completely different life experience, but because my skin is brown, you're going to put me in the same category with something I'm completely unfamiliar with. Okay. And so while brown women have their problems, it's a lot of other women and other people in general who have their problems. But nobody is getting on them about changing. Everybody wants to keep talking about what the brown woman needs to do. Okay. But the point I'm making is, because I'm going to get to the title, what the title means. Okay. So you have, I guess, extreme feminists. They have chased off the manly men. They don't want manly men to exist. And I'm going to be honest with the Democratic Party, it's very strong feminism. Okay, now, like I said, I'm not Democratic or Republican. I don't like either one. Both of them are two different extremes. You got one extreme. So on Democrats, you have the extreme feminism that want to emasculate all men. But then on the Republican side, especially under this particular type of office, you have men that feel like women need to shut up and they don't have a right to vote, especially if they don't have little children, not raising children, they don't have a right to vote. So now you got two extremes. This is what happens in an ego-driven world. That's what I'm talking about. So at one, you want to criticize the extreme feminists because they chased off the good men, right? But then you go to the other extreme where you have some men that feel like women shouldn't open up their doggone mouth. You have two extremes of people. And then you have in between where a lot of people not about none of that. Okay. And about these men coming out the closet, let me tell you something. I'm from Tuskegee, Alabama, where people don't come out the closet as easy. And I'm telling you, these men that's from the doggone boomers, it would be guys talking about how these guys would be married to their wives and have children. And these guys would go and have affairs with these homosexual men. And this is like during the 90s and early 2000s, and these guys were having sex with these boomer men. So ain't nobody turn these men gay. Now, I do get that an energy has been pushed out there that if you're not careful, and this can go for women too. So energy has been pushed out there that if you're not careful, you might find yourself having desires and you're trying to figure out why. Because when that energy is heavily pushed, you got to make sure that you're good and grounded in who you are. Because if you're not grounded in who you are, then you never know what might happen, right? But I say that to say, this is an ego-driven world, right? The people who want to tell somebody else how they're supposed to be acting, they're not really interested in vibrating higher in a sense to let go of the ego world. They're not ready to necessarily let go of the material world. They're not necessarily ready to let go of their ego. They're not interested in just becoming a pure soul yet. So like when you're not interested in those things, and you live in a world where people have no interest in really elevating consciously like that, then it's hard to dictate who they're supposed to be because it's an ego-driven world at that point. It's just fair game. Because when you are vibrating on a certain level of consciousness, on a higher consciousness, it's just certain things that you don't do. You don't go below a certain bandwidth. Like I don't know if I'm saying it right. You don't go below a certain vibration. When you have a collective that vibrate on a love vibration, then you start from love and you go up. You go higher and higher, and there's no telling what you see when you start. The lowest is the love, and you go higher from there. It's no telling what you're going to see. But a lot of people don't want to vibrate because on that frequency, they like their egos. And so when you like your ego, well, just because you don't do what somebody else is doing doesn't mean they're not going to do things, and you're going to disagree with it. But that's just what happens when you're in a world that's ruled by the ego. You can't really dictate how other people are supposed to act. Hello. You can't really dictate how people are supposed to act. You have to just go on and decide that you want to get out of this type of consciousness and get more into a higher consciousness, more about love, where the collective energy is a love frequency, and then you'll see better behaviors. But other than that, as long as you just like this ego world, you like it to be a little evil, it's going to get you, it's below love, and you just keep going to hell. You just keep going further and further down into hell. And so being okay with hell, because a lot of people are okay with this. I know a lot of people like to say, well, there's some good things. I don't care about some positive things, because when I keep saying there are some positive things, which there are, but when I keep saying there are some positive things, that's giving too much room for what you call the devil. That's giving too much room. And a lot of people like to keep giving room for what's called the devil. Now, the devil, as I say, is not some person, some entity with two horns, and that's not the devil. And to me, the devil to me is your own shadow, because that's what people's problems are. It's that karma. It's karma. It's their own shadow that's causing them all these problems. I realize it's a virtual reality too, but in the virtual reality, you still have a life inside a computer and stuff like that. But anyway, most stuff that's going on with people is their own shadow, and they like their shadows. They don't want to get rid of it. And so then you have other people with shadows that behave in a way that you might not agree with. But as long as you are with somebody that takes care of you, that treats you nice, and you're not interested in completely letting this type of world go, I want the ego world to be gone from my reality altogether. I want the ego world to be gone, because as long as it exists, you can't dictate how low it gets. I mean, the ego is pretty much, you're kind of in a hell realm. Because when you're more into love and above, you're out of the ego. So when you're in the ego, it's like you're in hell. Like your conscious awareness is like in your root. And so the kind of stuff that you see in that kind of reality, that's how we see the world the way it is, because our conscious awareness, or basically our soul, is in the root. And that's why it's always this constant survival. And so then we see this kind of world. This is the reality that we see, with the consciousness being in the root, or the soul being in the root. And so the best way to not be a witness, because you can't tell, if your soul is in your root, and now you can be classy, have money, have a nice house, it doesn't matter. A lot of people who are billionaires and trillionaires still have their conscious awareness still in their root. And it's a lot of women that like it that way. And you know why? Because they like patriarchy. A lot of women like patriarchy. And as long as you like patriarchy, you're going to be in an ego-driven world, and you can't dictate how bad it gets because you agreed to hell. I'm just saying. So, and I'm not saying patriarchy just has to be bad. Just right now it's bad, but I'm not saying that it has to be bad. That's how it is right now, though. Okay, because I think majority of men feel like women are not equal to them. And when I say equal, it don't have to be like she's lifting the same thing that he can lift. And with certain types of feminism, they make it seem like women are equal to men as far as physically, when it should not be a comparison, because men cannot give birth to children. So women have things to offer and men have things to offer, and that just should be respected. Trying to be equal to somebody as far as doing the exact same thing they're doing, that don't make sense to me. Like, I'm not going to try to be equal to somebody and try to do exactly what they do. We are different in different ways. We have like different values about ourselves. But then you do have a collective of men who do feel like women are not equal to them. The women are kind of below them. But I feel like religion taught them that. Religion taught them to believe that. Okay. Because when you see these tribes where people are mostly taught by nature and nobody else is telling them what to do, I don't think the men treat their women like that. I think the men understand the values of the women and the women understand the values of the men. And I don't think they call themselves men and women. That's more of this kind of society. I don't know what they call each other when these tribes are living in nature like that. Right? They don't have to worry about bills. They're not going to school yet. They understand the weather. They understand everything. And they never had to sit in anybody's classroom. Never. These tribes in nature, they never had to sit in anybody's classroom. And they know so much. They're so smart. But anyway, I said classroom is a way of indoctrination sometimes. But anyway, that's what I just felt like talking about. But what I was saying with that lady, when I was working with this lady and I was telling her about how bad it's getting with the bashing of brown women. And she kept talking about how one man's opinion doesn't mean that everybody think that way. And I said, listen, a lot of young men, boys that are like 10 years old, 11, 12, 13 years old are listening to him. And then you're going to see them grow up and they're going to absolutely hate brown women. And that's what we have right now. So some of these brown women that get online and they just want to just talk about just men, really a lot of the experience are coming from mostly brown men. But I feel like it's gotten worse with brown men in the last 10 years. And I think it's because there's been now I know we have a few brown women that's online now, but they didn't get online until brown men got online. And it's still more brown men that is probably bashing brown women than there are brown women. Because you have to understand, you have the Hebrew Israelites that bash brown women too. You had that GMS group. IUIC started doing it. And I'm not going to call any pastor's name, but it's a couple of pastors that I used to like to watch them. Then I started to hear them bashing brown women. Okay. So like you might have your Cynthia G, if you want to say she's go to the extreme, and you might have your certain people that don't really have that much reach. But then, with the brown men, you had your Kevin Samuels, you had your Tommy Sotomayor, let's not forget Sergeant Willie Pete, and you had your other men. And then on top of that, you had the GMS and the Hebrew Israelites. You had a whole organization. You can't compare to the couple of brown women that's online. You can't compare. And what those brown men are doing is they are tainting the minds of impressionable young brown boys. And that's what makes brown women just not want to deal with brown men anymore, because their minds are already messed up from a young age. And that's what I was trying to tell that young lady. And this is what's happening right now. Okay. So for some women that say they don't want to deal with men, a lot of the experience might come from the brown community. And you have other feminists. But see, there was extreme, I'm going to say masculinist or male misogyny. It was extreme misogyny with a lot of Caucasian women. It was extreme misogyny. Caucasian women had to fight for their right to vote. It was extreme misogyny. So like when you have that to the extreme, and then you have other ones, they come out and they go to another extreme. You can't tell one side how to behave. You can't. The best way to do it is to get out the ego. You just can't tell people how they're supposed to behave. Because when they vibrate higher, they're naturally going to start changing from the inside out. And that's just the best way to do it. That's what I was saying about some brown women that want to get online and give all of this advice to other brown women and telling them what they should do. And you can't. See, the thing is, people behave in a way according to what's on the inside of them. So when you have women or men that behave in a certain way, they behave according to what's going on in their heart, what's going on in their subconscious, or whatever's going on. And so the best thing is for them to change from the inside out. But it just don't make any sense going to them and telling them how they're supposed to behave when you have no idea how they were raised. You don't have no idea what they go through. You don't know what's going on in them in their head. You cannot tell them how to act. It don't work like that, because what's going on in their heart is dictating the way they act. Okay. The best way is for them to transform from the inside out. But because some people love the ego so much, this is just what you're going to have. And as long as you make sure that you're okay in your space, that's going to be it. Because a lot of people agree to an ego-driven world. They still like the ego-driven world. But then when I dictate how people behave, you can't do that. Because you like hell. If you like the ego-driven world, you do like hell. You like to have peace, your own level of peace in hell, but you like hell. You like hell. You like being below that love frequency. And so like that's just what you're going to get. But anyway, that is it. I just felt like talking about that really quickly, just to go live and stuff. Nothing really important. I just, want to just, find the time to, if I have something I want to discuss, even for 10 minutes, I just want to go live, or I try to stretch past 10 minutes to make it a little bit longer. But if I have something, any kind of subject, I just try to go live so I don't forget and just don't have anything on the channel for like a few days. But anyway, that is it. And I will talk later. All righty.